Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we've got a lot of price action over here on the Bitcoin price chart and throughout the altcoin market. A sea of red today as the 200-week moving average is being cut through like butter. I went ahead and marked the 200-week moving average right here to show how we were saying there's just been no buy volume coming in here on this 200-week moving average. And at this moment that we're at right now with Bitcoin back at its all-time high, I mean, it is just within ticks of its all-time high. By the time this video gets put out, that could probably be different, or even by the time I'm done recording and editing this could be different. Throughout the past year, I presented my thesis that I thought that Bitcoin was in somewhat of a mega super cycle in here, and that we were coming towards the end of it. And that if you were to have something of this magnitude happen in here, you'd pull back down into the 12s or so. It's kind of a pretty broad range in there on how that happens, really, with kind of like liquidation wicks, if it's even going to follow, something of that depth and magnitude. A lot of people argued that you could not go below the all-time high because it's never happened before for Bitcoin, but we have shown it absolutely has done that before. And this was also the same setup for Bitcoin in here that we ended up having during this cycle, the same consolidation and then a breakout. Obviously, the structure has gotten pretty stretched, a little changed in there, but here we go. As for Ethereum, the last couple of weeks had shown how Cardano had pulled all the way back down into this level near what would be similar to $800 for Ethereum. It's still even uncertain if that's going to be the holding level for Cardano. It still has continued to hold it, as we can see over here, using the peak from back in April of 2018. And that Ethereum hasn't quite gotten there yet, but it's hard to know because, this is a crashing market, and it's hard to say where a bottom's going to come in. How deep, how low is it going to go? How liquidated is this market going to get? Right now, there isn't really an end in sight. There's just absolutely no reversal volume showing up anywhere. Ever since we really had the Luna and Terra UST stuff happen back in the earlier part of May, we've just been in straight line down, and the question is who has been impacted by this? I've been keeping an eye on Dylan LeClaire over on Twitter. He's been posting a lot of interesting stuff. He said an atomic bomb of on-chain liquidations occur within 10 to 20% move down across the ETH and DeFi complex. 3AC, Celsius, and other players and speculators. No major buyers, as everyone can see other players' liquidation levels, and TradeFi is having its own volatility event. 4 a.m. local time. Guess we're staying up for this one. Decent chance this thing unravels while East Coast is asleep. 3 Arrows wallet dangerous close to liquidation on Aave. $226 million. WF pledged to borrow $186 million of USDT and USDC. Back of napkin math. ETH is liquidated between 1,050 and 1,000. So as you can see, we're at 1,026 right here. So all of this DeFi stuff, it's all making it visible to where everyone can see where liquidation levels are happening for major players in the market and for things like Celsius. And he's making a good point, right? All of these liquidation levels are public knowledge, and nobody wants to touch anything until to see what happens after those liquidations get tested. So this market sure is acting like it could get far worse before it gets any better. And we're just watching cascading effects happening after Luna and who that impacted. And now how are they going to be impacted more? And then who's going to get impacted after that? So there are no signs out there right now that the market is going to bounce. There's just no buy volume out there. There's very visible liquidation levels that are out there. And big players in the market are cascadingly getting impacted here in this market. So we could see serious liquidations happen where prices go significantly lower. To each their own on how they want to handle that. I'll never tell you what to do, but you see that what's happening right there, right? There goes that 200-week moving average. You can see even when the bottom in 2018 came in, you did not peak that low below that. So here, I'll take that off right there. You could see it really did come in as a supportive level in there. This was a liquidation event. Are we in a liquidation event? But when the bottom of the 2018 bear market came in, you can see how it held. That's not happening here. Altcoins are getting impacted. It seems they're probably going to get impacted even more. And like I've said, I have no way to pick out a bottom. I can show you all different things on how they can, but I have no confidence on where a bottom is going to come in for this market. And it's definitely just been a complete crashing market. So no signs of reversal coming in while we're continuing to crash. along with visible liquidation levels out there for some of the big players in the market. And I just saw Ben post this from BitBoy Crypto. I'm going to read this really quick. He's talking about Celsius, right? So we've had the Luna and Terra UST. Now that we've had the Celsius stuff, now we're seeing other big players in the market getting liquidated. We're seeing more and more cascading effects happening in here. Now, I don't participate in anything DeFi because I don't understand how the yields are paid out on these things. But, for anybody who is in Celsius, I mean, I think this is a good thing to read really quick so people can see what's happening here. So Ben writes, how Celsius and Alex Mashinsky are actively scamming people right now. Now, first of all, I don't know Mashinsky. I don't know any of this. I'm just reading this thread. Our account rep at Celsius Network is Ronald Lowe. He told us we had enough money in our account to pay off a loan, but we can't use money in our account. We have to send Celsius more money to pay it off. Imagine an insolvent company that you can't withdraw your money from asking you to send them more money. Literally defies logic. So you may be asking yourself the question, why would they not let you pay off the loan with money crypto stables that are already in your account? Great and logical question. Glad you asked. It's because they are totally insolvent. The money that shows in our account isn't actually there. That's the only reason we can't use it. It's not there. And these guys have the audacity to think that we're going to send more. This is a pure scam to try to bring in fresh money from users to pay off loans. You see, once Ethereum hits a certain number, we get liquidated and lose all our collateral against this loan. So they are trying to take advantage of fear in the market to pad their pockets. As they head towards bankruptcy, make no mistake about it, at this point, now that I see their game, it's only a matter of time before their biggest position gets liquidated at 16,500 for Bitcoin. That's coming. They know it. As it gets closer, they're pulling out all the stops. And then Ben goes in to talk about how, this is classic, scammer behavior. But you've got a lot of money tied up in the DeFi world right now. People can't access their money. Liquidation's happening. Just an unpleasant time in crypto right now, if I do say. That certainly doesn't look optimistic in the near-term future. It looks like there's a cascading world of things that have to get figured out here before things start turning to the upside, long-term. And whether and how bad is they going to get to the downside with this much liquidation stuff. In previous bear markets, previous crypto cycles, we did not have this extensive of DeFi stuff. And all these big players where the liquidation levels are visible, where we can see them. And what is increasingly apparent based on the people I'm following is that the liquidation levels are much lower. So imagine that the prices not only have to go reach the liquidation levels, but then what happens to the market after the liquidation levels get hit and it triggers cascading effects on there, right? But there's also other interesting dynamics at play in this market as well. If you missed the video that I put out late yesterday, so I did put out 2 videos yesterday. I put out one really late titled Something is Happening with Bitcoin and Ethereum's Dominance. And for those who have followed this channel for a long time, I've been staring a lot at the Bitcoin plus Ethereum dominance, and it has been a complete headache to me on why this thing hasn't broken down in here. And I've shown examples of how these things tend to break down to the downside, and they're not reversals that end up turning it back to the upside, but that these things play out like this and then break down. And I went into that in this video yesterday, and I know for a lot of you guys who have been here for a while, we've talked about this so much, and just being a headache in here for why we haven't broken down like in a capitulative manner over here in the Bitcoin and the Ethereum dominance. And that suddenly in the last, now 2 to 3 days, it's still continuing to pick up momentum here. This Bitcoin and Ethereum dominance is playing out precisely. And that if this is true, then we're seeing the dynamic change over here in the Bitcoin and the Ethereum dominance live right now, just in the last 3 days. And that something under the hood is going on in the market if this thing's going to continue going like this. But if you haven't watched yesterday's video, probably have, but if you haven't, it's finally doing it. We're finally seeing the behavior of the Bitcoin plus Ethereum dominance start to behave like what happens before these things go off into capitulation. So if this thing is going to go off into capitulation, what does that mean, right? It doesn't tell us a story of what that means. What has happened throughout history is that whenever this is falling like this, and we are going down like that, and if we are going to have a moment like that right in there, each time this was a run up in the altcoin market, right? So the altcoin market was moving to the upside. So the big question is this actually going to be that the altcoin market kind of finds stability out there and that Ethereum and Bitcoin just keep on crashing? Or is it that, something under the hood is changing, some type of rotation in this market's about to play out here. But finally, this move has begun to start to happen. And you'll have to excuse the wicks over here when I'm using CoinTrader Pro. This is kind of an API issue, but we've spent so much time staring at this thing to figure it out, to see, why is this thing not breaking down? And suddenly it is starting to do just that. Now, what we could see is it still had to pause out in here before things really started getting to go. And so are we in that? Is this thing going to have to pause out here for a little while based on the structure, based on how it's been following it? And if it continues to follow it, it says it does pause out here for a little while before anything gets going. But the big question is, what is the market dynamic like here in the cryptocurrency market during that moment? Is it that everything is crashing, but Bitcoin and Ethereum are crashing much harder? Or is it that the market finds some type of support at some point and the altcoins just absolutely rock star into that moment? We don't know. The structure would have to continue playing out, and then the answer would have to be presented at that time. But historically, in these moments, when this type of stuff is happening in here, when these bigger moves are happening in here, these have all been moments where the altcoin market is rock starring to the upside. But we know that there's a lot of negative stuff out there in the world right now. We're talking about liquidation levels. We're talking about collapses of things like Luna and Terra, UST, and talking about funds going insolvent. Those are not like bullish. Those are not bullish things. U.S. 10-year Treasury yield skyrocketing, right? Stock market down. Those are not bullish things. But the amazing thing is that we've spent so much time looking at this, and I can tell you, it started getting to a point where I thought I was crazy. I thought, I'm like, how could I miss this? How could this just not be what it really looked like? And it's that it just took a moment to get there. And then we could see that, even got up here to the 786 Fibonacci retracement level before it really turned over, and boom, there you go. There we have it. And so I can't believe it. It's showing up on there, but the answer to what it means isn't there yet. All it says, at this point, all it says is that if this happens, right? If this happens and it heads down to like 40% dominance or something right now, the only thing it's telling us is that the altcoin market will perform better than Bitcoin and Ethereum combined. So does that mean that Ethereum and Bitcoin keep crumbling, but the altcoin market does not crumble at that rate? Or does it mean that a support comes in and we find some type of skyrocketing move to come in and happen? That is yet to be seen. But what the structure says is that if it continues going like it has been, that Ethereum and Bitcoin are not going to be the better performers moving forward. And, pick your poison for which altcoins that's going to be that are going to be the rock stars during that moment. I've had my thoughts on what coins I thought were going to do really well. I've had my own, internal perception and worldview of what I thought cryptocurrencies would be and be popular, and that hasn't manifested itself yet. But I'm going to bet it's not going to have to do with DeFi. So this does provide me some glimmer of hope out there. However, we do know that really the only thing that this chart does mean is it just means that if it plays out like that, it would mean that the altcoin market is performing better than Bitcoin and better than Ethereum combined. It does not tell us that the altcoin market is going to surge to the upside. It just tells us that the altcoin market collectively would be performing better than Bitcoin and Ethereum combined. But when we look back to our reference points of when that has happened, when the actual breakdowns were actually occurring in here, in each of the three circumstances in which they did start cracking and setting new lows in here, it was positive price action for the altcoin market. It was not a collapse of Bitcoin and Ethereum and the altcoin market just kind of stayed steady, outperforming. All of these examples that ended up happening were the altcoin market going to the upside. But, the real true definition of what the Bitcoin dominance plus Ethereum dominance chart really just means is it just means that the altcoin market collectively is performing better than Bitcoin and Ethereum as this thing is moving down. However, in the three examples that we have and the three times that it has happened, all three of them were that Bitcoin and Ethereum were doing okay, and the altcoin market was the rock star. It was not a situation of where everything was falling, but the altcoin market was falling less. It was periods of real extreme excitement happening in the altcoin market. So very interesting to see that finally coming into fruition. But still, just where is the bottom going to come in on this market? And I don't have a way to pick it. And, I can keep looking back to other crash examples that have happened in here. So long as this isn't like our entire market is collapsing entirely. But if this is just like a deep, deep correction happening in here, like looking back to Bitcoin examples of how they ended up occurring in here, and, you kind of double tap, then you have your first initial breakdown, pausing in here. then off into capitulation you go. Similar things for Ethereum in here. Double bouncing, pausing underneath, then off into capitulation it goes. Still does not say where a bottom is. This was a little bit different. This one actually did give a real retrace. That was a 702 Fibonacci retracement, but you could see as it started to kind of pause out, had its first breakdown, then off into capitulation it went. So we'll just have to see. I would say this playing out over here on the Bitcoin and the Ethereum dominance right now is the thing that really has me intrigued, just because we spent way too much time talking about it. I really got to the point where I felt like I was insane because it wasn't playing out. But now we're starting to see this thing start to emerge. And so if it's true, right? If we just kind of pause out here for a minute and then start going, we just kind of pause out here for a minute and then start going, what happens in this market? That's the thing I'm looking forward to seeing the answer to. Because while this market is screaming crash, 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 when these things happened, that's not what was happening in the altcoin market. The 3 times that we've had those big moves down in that dominance, that's not what was happening in the altcoin market. So be interesting to see. So, all right, we'll start to wrap this thing up. Ethereum's finding a little support there. It's back above 1,100 currently. Bitcoin getting back to 21,000. So we got right back there near the all-time high on Bitcoin, getting within a hairline tick of back testing that all-time high, but still not quite. So the wildness continues in this market. We'll check in on it later and see what's going on. On a side note, today's a big day. They're expecting a bigger rate hike than usual coming out of the Fed, expecting 75 basis points of a hike. Stock futures rose in early morning trading on Wednesday as investors anxiously awaited the Federal Reserve's aggressive action to tame surging inflation. So that'll be coming today. That's highly anticipated. A lot of the fear in the market has been related to this. Once the CPI numbers came out last Friday of 8.6 inflation rate year over year, and that there has been no taming in inflation happening here. And what is the Fed going to do? And today we're going to get to hear out of their mouth, because there's been a lot of economic changes in there, right? We're seeing layoffs, we're seeing over inventories at retailers, we're seeing slowdown in mortgage applications, we're seeing lots of things change dynamically within the economy with inflation at the same time. So it's highly anticipated to see what the Fed does and what the Fed says, and that'll be later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1800 UTC. But all right, guys, that's it for this one. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.